Yes.
Can I go live?
Can you give us just a 3, 2, 1?
Sure.
Yes. Are you ready, Dr. Baker?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we live, Obi? So, Dr. Baker.
Good evening and welcome to our Board of Trustees Transportation Study Ad Hoc Committee meeting. And this meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. At this point, we will recognize that this meeting is open to the public with limited first come, first served seating due to COVID-19. All persons wishing to attend meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board Meetings, and Sumter School District's Facebook page. At this time, we'll have our meditative thought followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission of Sumter School District is to equip students to be responsible, successful, and productive citizens in a global society. Our vision: Sumter School District develops and cultivates competitive students who embrace diversity, act responsibly, and contribute positively to society. Our mission of this committee is to ensure Sumter School District provides transportation services that will allow opportunities for all children to arrive and depart school in a safe and efficient manner while including the voice of all stakeholders. Our vision is to ensure all students enrolled in Sumter School District will be provided with transportation that is safe and sufficient while supporting staff with growth opportunities to achieve the mission set forth by the Ad Hoc Committee. Our committee members are myself, J. Frank Baker, and I am chairman of the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. We also have Brian Austin, trustee, and we have Matthew McLeod, trustee, and Cheryl T.
She's not
Great, trustee. Our subcommittee members are Anita Hunter, Evelyn Collier, Denise Jones, Jason Johnson, Teresa Sullivan, Valencia Ray Williams, and Alicia Case Rodriguez. Our staff members are Dr. Penelope Martin Knox and Amy Hanson. Tonight we have joining us virtually Cheryl Ray.
She's not connected yet.
She's not connected. All right. Teresa Sullivan, Denise Jones, Anita Hunter, and Alicia Case Rodriguez. Only one not connected is Miss Ray.
Not yet.
All right. You can just let me know. So at this time, I will call the meeting to order. And again, I want to welcome everyone that's here tonight in person, those who are watching and participating virtually as subcommittee members, and to our public out there. Thank you so much. You have the agenda before you. If there are no objections to the agenda, it will stand approved. Any objections? Seeing none, the agenda will stand approved. Also, the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of minutes. If anyone knows of any additional comments to the minutes or corrections, you may say so at this time. If not, then they will stand. Okay, they will stand approved.
Miss Ray is calling in.
Miss Ray is calling in now. Okay, so Miss Ray is now joining us also. Okay, at this point in time, I will turn our meeting over to Mr. Crawford, who is our consultant.
Thank you, Dr. Baker, and members of the Ad Hoc Committee. Thank you for, and the board, thank you for another night of your time in working through the realignment study. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Get some things situated. Okay, move one more thing around. Let's do it up top here. So tonight's our fourth meeting of for the realignment study. This is our last meeting before we go to the public in December to share some options with the public and to get some more input from them at meetings. And we'll talk about that near the end of my presentation here. I don't have a ton of new material to cover. We have not made changes to the options since the last meeting, but we do have some things to discuss, and we've also done some things to further enhance the analysis that we're doing, and just to ensure that we're being as objective as possible and looking at everything through an equitable lens, like we're tasked to do. So the objectives for tonight are to review some updates that we've made. Particularly, we've made some updates to our scoring, not the scoring per se, but to the ranking methodology that we're looking at as we start to size up the options to each other and also evaluate the current zones as it relates to some of those scores. And then finally, just want to look over a couple things, some feedback that's been received. We have received about almost 100 comments so far from people online, and some of them suggest some things. And so I wanted to bring those to the committee just to get your take on some of them and see if it's something that we should consider doing, or if it's something that we should just, that we feel may not bring us closer to adhering to our objectives. And then just talk about those comments as it relates to the options to see if there maybe should be any adjustments before we come to the public in December. So I've covered this every single meeting, and so I'm going to be pretty brief on this section, but we are here, as I say at every single meeting, to basically take a look at Sumter County as a whole. The zones that you currently have for your schools are still the residual of when there used to be 2 separate school districts. And since that consolidation in 2011, they haven't been looked at comprehensively. So the real big thing here is just to take a look at your district as a whole, comprehensively as one unit, and determine what efficiencies could be made as it relates to utilization, transportation in particular, and demographics, and some of the other factors that we've covered. We're looking at all 3 levels as we're working through this. And we're focused on developing a plan that's best for all children in the county, not looking at what's best for one school or one neighborhood or one particular student, but really what's best for all children as a whole. So we're working Cropper GIS through this process with an open and transparent lens so that the public can follow along and follow materials that are being discussed at every single meeting. We're really focused on developing options that best align to those criteria that we've discussed at every meeting, address imbalances in utilization and as well as transportation, and looking at everything holistically. And the expectation is that the recommendation will come to the board in March of next year. So moving right along the calendar, we've covered a lot of ground since we first started. As you could see, first started meeting with this committee in August. And you could see how much ground we've covered since then. And we still have a good amount of time left, but we're at the point where we're having our last committee meeting before we go to our second public info session that's scheduled December 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I'll provide some more details on locations of those and times here at the end of the presentation. Once we get done with that public info session in December, we're going to take a break and regroup again in the beginning of second week, I think around the second week of January. Couple more meetings in January, and then we'll be going back to the public again in February. So a lot more time still to review and vet these options, and really just focusing on taking some options to the public in December at this next phase in getting some additional input from stakeholders in the community. So since our last meeting, we have been tracking comments that have been provided, that have been coming through on the general feedback form on our website, sumterrealignment.com. There is a general feedback form there where anybody can go on and type in any comments at any time. We have posted the updated comments, I think as of yesterday, on the sumterrealignment.com under this meeting category. So if you wanted to go in there and look at the comments, it's a rolling total of all the comments that have been received so far, and you can go and look at those. We are studying those, and we've put those into some typologies, grouped some of them together, some common themes to talk about tonight, just to give everybody an update on what we're seeing from the general public. Like I said, we have the same two options, 1B and 2B from the last meeting. We haven't made any changes to those. And so the handouts that you have tonight and what you received at the last meeting for those options, the numbers have not changed. Those options are also available on our interactive map at croppermap.com/Sumter, which is getting a lot of activity. Some new things to analyze tonight is we have revised our option score and ranking chart evaluation. Since the last meeting, there's been some discussion amongst the board, a few board members talking about concerns about how the way that we're evaluating options in that ranking method isn't necessarily equitable when we're giving more weight to one criteria or another. And we've taken that into consideration, and we've actually made some changes to address those concerns. Right, what we're doing now is we're basically giving a score, showing a table that has the raw scores, as we talked about last meeting, for each criteria element and for current and the options. And then we're doing a ranking table that basically shows which one has ranked the best between the two options. And then we've summed those up to give you kind of an idea on how the options compare to each other in regards to the ranking. And that's something that's fascinating to me, and it's something that we'll be sharing with you here shortly. And some of the things that we made changes to with our scoring was that the impacts are now shown a total impacts in our raw score chart, as well as average transportation time. And so really what we've done is we've isolated the scoring mechanisms in one table, and then we put the ranking in another table, just so that we can make sure that we're looking at things as equitable as possible as it relates to the criteria. So I want to dive into some of the feedback that we've received, and just to have a conversation about some of the things that we've heard over the last couple of weeks, couple of months. There was a couple of themes, a couple of comments about from communities in the Marlboro and Pepperidge subdivisions. And we talked about this briefly at the last meeting, but it's something that I wanted to bring back to the committee to talk about and think about, get your take on these. I have on the slide, I have the area that's Marlboro Estates that's located here. And you could see the bold black outline on the map shows you that this area is currently within the Sumter High School attendance area. In our options, we're moving, there's a railroad track that runs along through town. And so we divided some of the areas along that railroad track and sent them to another high school. They're going to Lakewood High in our options. So these communities have expressed some concern about proximity to their school versus Lakewood versus being moved to Lakewood High. Some of the concerns that they are talking about, that they say that they are within walking distance to Sumter High School, I know that it's crossing over some roads that look like they may be more significant roads on the map, but the comments have said that they could walk to the school. And they were suggesting of possibly moving it down south to the river, which is really where the current Sumter High School line follows. Other comments from Marlboro saying that, you know, they're close enough to the high school that they can walk to the stadium for football games, and they can hear the football games being played and things like that. We looked at the potential of moving these areas, just doing some back of the napkin counts to see what would the impact be if these areas were to stay in Sumter and not move to Lakewood. It would take, what would happen was it would take Lakewood from 60% utilization down to 50%, and Sumter would go from 72 up to 75%. You're talking about 77 high school kids in 3 planning blocks in this region that makes up these neighborhoods. It doesn't have an impact on the feeders or on the demographics, but it does create more of an imbalance in utilization. I think that look in terms of transportation distance, I would say that it is closer to Sumter High School than Lakewood. As you could see on the figure on the map, Lakewood's down here and Sumter is over here. They're not very far from Lakewood. They could probably travel down Lewis Road and get to Lakewood pretty quickly. But what do you guys think about this particular topic thread that's come across by a couple people on the general feedback forum? Anybody on the committee want to provide any thoughts about this and in relation to any of the things that I've talked about?
I'll begin and then yield to the other members. Bear in mind, Mr. Cropper, now the stadium is not located at the high school. The stadium is in another area, and rightly so. The Marlboro particularly, they can walk from their homes to the stadium. But you made a very good point. There's an extremely busy highway. If they were walking actually from those 2 subdivisions to cross, and it would be very dangerous. Pinewood Road with a tremendous amount of traffic, and then if they came and made a right out from the developments, they would still have another major intersection to cross. So to me, that would create a dangerous situation for kids walking to school. So I'm going to yield now to our committee in person, and then we'll come to our folks that are virtual. McLeod, wait a minute.
Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Ray.
If I heard you correctly, that changed the utilization of Lakewood quite a bit. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I can see we're just leave that neighborhood to go to Lakewood.
Okay. All right. Ms. McLeod.
Well, on what you were saying there, that is quite a walk from Marlboro all the way over to Sumter High School. Now I would bet if we didn't have buses going to Marlboro, there'd probably be a lot of discussion about that.
Well, discussion. You're right. I agree. Awesome.
I concur with everything that's been said. And the only thing I was going to say is that I think that we need to keep our focus on making sure that the option addresses many of the criteria as possible and not singling out just one criteria that may be an inconvenience for some. So if we stick to the criteria, I think that that's the best option to go with them. Leaving it as it currently is presented, I think is the best option.
Okay. What about Ms. Sullivan, Ms. Jones, Ms. Hunter, or Ms. Rodriguez?
I agree. I think we leave it as it is on the map for the options. And once we vote on what the board votes on the option that they choose, we go with that. We have to follow through with the process.
Okay. All right. Ms. Sullivan, Ms. Jones, Ms. Hunter, any comments?
Miss Alicia. Pace Rodriguez. She typed something in the chat box.
Yeah,
I just put that I agree with the comment in the room that the criteria was set for a reason. And if we start teasing out little specifics, then we get away from the pure element of what we were looking for.
okay,
And I agree also.
okay. All right, anyone else? All right, Mr. Cropper, did you hear all of those comments?
Yes, I did, and I really appreciate for the conversation. And I'm in agreement with you guys as well. I think that the utilization component is something that that makes it a challenge to address this. If it were something where the students could walk to Sumter High School safely, that may be a different and carry some more weight. But knowing that some of the other details about how the stadium isn't connected, that makes starting to make sense where they said they walk to the stadium. So, but if it's not at the high school, that makes more sense now. And so I'm in agreement with the group in terms of their opinion on keeping this and not making an adjustment here, with the focus on what's best for all and for all schools within the county. And so I think that's really good and very appreciated.
Okay.
There's another group of questions or comments that were provided. And there have been several comments about Kingsbury and Wilder. The current zones, as you recall, I'm not sure if you recall, the current zones for Kingsbury and Wilder have an area where Wilder comes down under Kingsbury and pulls an area into Wilder. And we had looked at an option, the original option 2 took that away and sort of made a boxy configuration for Kingsbury and Wilder. When we did that, if you recall, it created a pretty big imbalance in the demographics of those schools and between Kingsbury and Wilder. So we reverted back to the current zones with the new 2B option. The community has expressed some concern about the Kingsbury and Wilder zones, the way that they don't necessarily have that boxy configuration in some areas that are going to further away from home to Wilder than where they would be closer to Kingsbury. This is one where I wouldn't suggest a change back to make them like the option 2 was originally, because of the reasons that I had stated previously about how it creates that imbalance in demographics. But I wanted to just bring it to the table and just bring it to light to show, that there are people who are talking about it, who are concerned about that, but I'm not really sure if there's anything we could do about it because of with the focus on the criteria. Does anybody want to provide any comments on that or anything additional to that component of this? And I could show you on the map what I'm talking about if you'd like, or any clarification. Anybody else have any concerns with my thoughts to understand that there are concerns here with the proximity, but I think that but I'm more inclined not to make a change to address proximity because it creates a bigger imbalance in the demographics.
Mr. Austin.
The proximity would be impacted both ways. For Kingsbury, there are some students that are zoned to go to Kingsbury in these options that will be closer to go to Wilder. Is that correct as well?
Let's take a look here real quick. Let's see where my map is. So when I zoom in here, the teal colored zone is Wilder and the brown colored zone is Kingsbury. And so if you, these are current zones. And if you look at the option, you see what we've done is we have extended Kingsbury and Wilder further west to get students for the other rezoning purposes to address some of the other schools. But this particular area remains as it currently is with between Kingsbury and Wilder. We did do one earlier that had this southern area feeding into Kingsbury, and Wilder picked up some area north of Millwood to give them some utilization, but that created a pretty significant imbalance in the demographics of the schools. In particular, the Black population for Wilder was, I believe it was up in the 90 percentile range. And so you could see that option 2B, we keep option 1 and 2B the same configuration. And also keep in mind that this area is, there is a railroad track divides this area. And I'm not sure how walkable of a situation it is for these communities to go to Kingsbury. I believe that they are being transported. Even if they were to go to Kingsbury, they would probably have to be transported to Kingsbury. Would you guys know anything about that in terms of off of Kingsbury Drive, communities on the west side of the railroad tracks? Would those kids, elementary kids, be able to walk to Kingsbury Elementary School?
They would be transported. They could walk, but again, it becomes a safety factor, so they would be provided transportation.
So if they're being transported, if you could see Wilder, it's not that much further away than Kingsbury. They are correct that there is a school closer to them, but as we look at all the factors, like we've talked about with the criteria, you have to weigh all the different factors. And the zone configuration that you have right now, as it shows on the map, really does the best job, in my opinion, in this region of handling balance of the different criteria, in particular, the utilization, demographics, and transportation. Would and I'm not sure, I'm not really asking yay or nay on this, but I was just trying to see that it's helpful to understand that they would have to be transported regardless. But does anybody have any other comments about this particular comment thread that's been coming up on the feedback form? So if we don't have anything, then that's we can always come back to it, or I don't want to jump ahead. If anybody needs a little time to take a look at it, or explore anything. Does anybody have any questions about this? I'm inclined in suggesting that we keep it as it is. But if anybody has any opposition to that, please speak up. Let me know if you think that we should look at something different.
If I could, I don't have any opposition to leaving it the way you have it. I think what has precipitated the comments is the public's belief and understanding that this realignment has as a priority transportation. And so that's why we have so many comments that say, I drive past one school to get to another, when what they think this whole proposal is about is transportation.
Great, it's a great comment, and that's what I'm seeing too. And when we get to December and tell the story to the public, we'll make sure that we're clear that transportation is a focus, but we're also looking at other elements of the criteria. Okay, well, thank you for that. I think that's helpful and helpful for me and James as we work through looking through the comments. Again, when we look at these comments, we focus on what comments could be addressed to bring us closer to adhering to our criteria. And really, it's not a matter of a number of comments necessitates a change, as more of a matter of the comment bringing us closer to adhering to our criteria. So I've said this before, we could get 100 comments of people wanting to move one area to an area that may not bring a change, where one comment may come across that does bring us closer to the criteria where a change could be made. So, so thank you for that. There was another thing that we've seen a lot of comments come across about concerns about seniors moving in their last year, and a lot of even some high school kids saying, I don't want to leave my last year. I'm coming up to my final year and things like that. And one of the things we wanted to bring this up just so that people can, on the viewing public can hear, as well as something that we'll reinforce in December, that the board has provided a legacy enrollment provision, also referred to as grandfathering, that allows that rising senior to finish out at their same school. They have to have transportation provided, and their siblings are not eligible to stay with them, but the district has already covered this concern in allowing students at that final year of 12th, 8th grade, or 5th grade to continue to finish out at their existing school to further reduce the impact. But there have been a number of comments come across about concerns about moving in that last year. And I think that we just need to make sure that we're clear as you guys communicate to the public. And I will make sure to stress this when we go to the public in December, that this has been covered and discussed, and that the district is allowing these students who are coming into their final year to finish out. Any other comments on this particular thread that I brought up?
Mr. Austin?
There was another comment that I saw, I think it was in one of the previous ones, that spoke to the open enrollment. With the current open enrollment procedure, they apply at the end of the highest grade of the school they're at, or is it every year?
Once they're in, they remain.
So until the complete
Terminal
highest grade.
grade.
Okay. I just wanted that to be something that was made clear as well, because I did see one of those comments about open enrollment.
Okay, so if a student is open enrolled and they're eligible to remain throughout the course of their tenure at that school.
That's correct.
Okay, and with the realignment, say the realignment takes effect, and somebody open enrolls in, will they still have that same? Currently, would still have that policy would still hold?
That's correct.
Okay, and that open enrollment is for special programs such as the IB program at Sumter, and whatever that any program for like that, for example.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, okay. So it's really open enrollment for program specific uses, not just more of an open enrollment. I'd like my child to go to this school, but more program driven policy related to that open enrollment.
And that would be correct.
Okay. We had another, we always focus on the things that have been coming across that are looking for change, and some of the negative, I wouldn't say negative, but people who are upset or concerned about the realignment. But, and I hate to do, we do it just kind of like the evening news. We give some of the bad news at the front, and we finish off with the good news, which I don't necessarily think is the best way to do things, but there is some good news too here, in that there are comments that are coming across from public members of the public who are supportive of the work that's being done, and supporting the options, and supportive of being realigned potentially to a school that's closer to them, and trying to resolve some of the issues in particular at high school and things like that. So it should be noted that it's not all people who are concerned or upset, and that there are comments and input being provided of people who are happy with the work that you guys and we are doing on this study. So I think that's definitely noteworthy, that there are positives in there, and that it's not all negative. So any other comments on this one before we move on? So we will continue to track feedback that's being provided. I know that James and myself check it on the daily and see what's coming across. And I know that as the media puts out stories updating the public on the process and things like that, we see more comments come across. So we're very appreciative of the input that's being provided by the public and all of the media partners and everyone who's working to get the word out and communicate to the stakeholders of Sumter County about this process. So really happy with the input that's being provided as we continue our work.
Could I ask a couple of questions that have been asked of me?
Absolutely.
The first question came about this afternoon in a meeting that I was in, and some of the school teachers whose children are currently being allowed to attend the school where they are employed, although it's outside of their zoned school. They were wondering if their children would still be allowed to go to school with them. Do we have an answer for that?
Well, if they're on open enrollment, it would carry over as long as that school has the grade level. In other words, if the school is K through 5 or pre-K through 5, and the child's approved for and is in the first grade, then that open enrollment would be good for the number of grade years that is offered at that school.
Okay. Well, when you use the terminology open enrollment, but I think there's a difference between open enrollment and a request for out of zone. Open enrollment is for an educational program, and an out of zone request is for a different reason. Am I correct?
Well, if it's approved for a different school, the same criteria, and even though you're looking at two different situations or two different criteria, if either or the other is approved, it would be for the duration of those grades at that school level.
Okay. So even staff members' children can it still applies to them, basically.
Yeah, they would be treated just like, any other person who applied.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is for our military families. I'm wondering if consideration can be made for families. We have people moving into the district at all times of the year. We have a large group of families actually PCSing into the Sumter School District over the Christmas holidays. So when they come in, they may be zoned for one school, and then as a result of the realignment in the fall, now their children are going to be going to a different school. Is there a concession that can be made for that they can remain in that school that they originally go to? Yes, we all know military families go through so many transitions, and children already are, stretched pretty thin educationally. So I don't know if that's something we could consider allowing military families to get some kind of a, I hate to say a special accommodation, but to prevent their children from having to go to another new school 6 months after they've just arrived in one school. If we could do that, I know that would be greatly appreciated.
And what I'm going to do is yield to our superintendent on that and let her make a comment, and then we'll come to Mr. McLeod. Oh, you want to go first? I was just gonna say, that's probably something that we probably need to have our policy committee look at.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Ms. Jones, now I'd like to yield to the superintendent, because I know a lot of these, and you make an excellent point, because that happens with the military. So I want to yield to Dr. Martin Knox and just let her share how she handles situations like that.
And so I agree with you, Mr. McLeod, about taking it back to the policy committee so that we are consistent. But we usually look at it on a case-by-case basis, and oftentimes it could be classified as a hardship case. So the last thing we want to do is disrupt our children on a regular basis. So that's why I said we would do it on a case-by-case basis. And so if there's a matter that we need to look into, Ms. Tanya Addison is the one who handles those matters, or they can be brought to my attention. But we definitely want to make sure that our children are secure in their educational track.
Thank you. On behalf of all of our military families, I thank you.
And yes, both of those questions are more policy driven and really come from the top in terms of a directive from the board regarding teachers' children or special cases in, for example, military families. So I will keep it noted on my radar, and as the board deliberates on that, we will provide some updates to you when we have more information on regarding those components, and definitely take note of it and see if we can't provide a more clarifying answer to those who are curious about that.
And Mr. Crop, I'm going to note from Mr. McLeod's recommendation, Mr. Austin chairs the policy committee, and I'm sure he is making note to carry that back to our policy committee.
Okay, great. Do you know when they meet? Do they meet before December 6th through 8th?
I believe they're meeting December 2nd. Is it December 2nd, Mr. Thompson? Yes, they are meeting December 2nd, so it's very timely.
Okay, and you know, we can cross that bridge when we get there. We don't necessarily have to have an answer by December 6th. If it's still too early to provide an answer for some of these to the public, we can at least say that it's been addressed and something that we will follow up once the district and the board has a firm decision on these.
Okay, yeah, that would certainly be the course we would take.
Okay. Any other questions that you know? I think I really appreciate it, Ms. Sullivan, and bringing up those questions that people are asking you, that you're hearing. Are there any other questions that, as you guys work and you know, outside of committee and things like that, is there anything else that people have asked you and you're thinking, you know, I'm not really sure I know the answer to that, let me find out? Is anything else that you think that we should talk about as a group? Okay, well, I will, if something does come up, you know, you can always post it in chat, or you can just let me know and I can stop and we can talk about it. So moving on, I want to talk about our options scoring. And so, like I said, the focus of our scoring methodology and the scores, the tables that we've been scoring and evaluating, is really to further enable this group and ourselves as consultants to focus on everything and making data-driven decisions, and focus on making equitable decisions that are equitable and in the best interest for all children. We have, so what we've done is we've split up we've isolated the scores into one table, and then we've done ranking in its own table. Before, we were intermingling some scores with ranking, and when you sum those up, the total wasn't necessarily apples to apples, because we were scoring up a large number for, say, utilization, but a small number for a 1 through 2 or 3 ranking. And it was brought up by a couple board meetings that I remember hearing, and then also talking with some community members about it. It made us go back and take a look at it and just see, is there some way to sharpen the pencil on this and make sure that we're doing things as objectively as possible in focusing on these criteria as a whole, holistically, equally. So we have made some changes, and I'll show them here to you here. So what we've done with the ranking, we've done some scoring and into one table, and we have the ranking in another table. So when it comes to the ranking, we're basically looking at all of the actual results, and whatever result scores the best, which the highest score, that gets a rank of 1. And then the second place, since we have 2 options, that gets a rank of 2. So let's take a look at the first table here. And this is really good stuff. This basically takes all of those specific individual detailed school-based tables, all the 50 pages of statistics, and puts them into a good summary document here. So when you look at this, everything other than impacts and transportation, the higher the score, the better the option ranks. It is performing, I should say. So when you look through here, you could see, looking at things, we don't have a sum on this table of data, because it's really, this table is designed to look at one line by line and see how they're performing. I love this table because it helps me see, how are we compared to the current? Are we getting better than, are we scoring better than the current, or are we scoring worse? And I think in most cases, we're scoring better. So if you look at this, the impacts are what they are. There's no data for the current because kids aren't impacted current. So if you look at the impacts, you can see at elementary, the 2B option does impact more than the 1B option. And looking at utilization, the scores for utilization for elementary, both options are performing better than the current zones in terms of creating that balance of utilization. Average transportation distance is the one component, one of the few components in the table where the current is doing better than the options for elementary. And this was something that I brought up last meeting. The main reason why you see the numbers bumping up, although there are slight bump up from current from 3.58 to 3.62 or 0.63, is related to Rafting Creek and drawing more students into Rafting Creek to bring their enrollment up. We expanded the Rafting Creek area, and that area, and the result of that is creating a little bit longer of overall average transportation distance. This was discussed by the board as a whole, and they determined that they wanted to. The board had a discussion of whether expanding the Rafting Creek zone is something that we should shy away from or continue to explore as we evaluate options. The board deliberated on this, and they determined that it's really focusing on a holistic viewpoint of all these criteria, and that the Rafting Creek should not be excluded from the study, and that any area is subject to impact. And so the board acknowledged that the Rafting Creek area is expanded in the zones, and they did not do anything or give us any direction to not do that, but to keep the trust in the process and keep following and focusing on all factors here. And if you look at demographic diversity, the scores for the options are scoring better than the current as it relates to the demographic scores. And the elementary to middle school feeder the option 2B is scoring the same as current, and the 1B is scoring 2 points poorer than option 2B and the current. You're looking at middle schools, option 1B impacts 824 students and 2B impacts 577. So a lot more students impacted in option 1 for middle schools. But looking at some of the other down the line utilization, the options are performing much better than current in terms of having a balanced utilization. Transportation distance is better, although it's not a substantial change. It is performing better in terms of transportation than the current zones. And then demographics as well, that more of a balance of demographics across the schools. And middle to high school feeder pattern is one I talked about. Currently, you have all of your middle schools feed to high schools 100%. So that's hard to beat. That's pretty much a perfect score. And so as we do our work, the middle to high school feeder scores are not performing as good as current, but the benefit is that all of the other scores are showing better performance. And then finally, high school. Looking at high school, the options, both of them impact close to the same number. The 2B impacts more, 2,119 versus 2,067. But utilization, you could see, is performing better. The score of 7 and 6 versus a 4 for the current. And most importantly, the big benefit that we're seeing here is the impact on average transportation for high school. And this is what I expected, in that currently the average distance for a student to go into school, average transportation distance is 7.5 miles. And these options bring those down to 5.95 or 5.92. And so that really had a substantial improvement. Currently, some students are, I think it was Sumter High School was on average about 3 miles. And then Crestwood, I think it was about 11 miles. So there was a big difference between the high schools in terms of their distance to schools. And in the work that you guys and we have done, we're bringing these distances from students to school for all 3 schools to a more equitable situation. And that's showing up in our numbers here. So, and it's important to talk about, because if this being an ad hoc transportation committee, we're clearly seeing an improvement in transportation in these options compared to the current zones, in particular high schools. And then in terms of demographic diversity, the demographics are for the current are performing better than the options. The current is 33, and option 1B and 2B are 28 and 31. And you look at those individual school demographics, and none of them are falling greatly away from the average, although there are more spreads of demographics in the options than there are currently. And so, looking at, I like to have them no more than 15% outside of the average, and we're within 15%. I think within maybe closer to within 10% of the average as you look at the demographics. And so, so these are the results of the scores in the actual scoring table. Does anybody have any questions about these, or any comments about this particular table? And so this table, what we've done then is this table gives you kind of a breakdown of the scoring results. But then what we did is we took it to the next step, and then we ranked option 1 and 2B based off of what is scoring better. And so if it's a higher score in terms of utilization or demographics or feeder patterns, it would rank first, and then the other one would rank second. If it was a lower distance in terms of average transportation, the lower one would rank 1, and the next one would rank second. And so, and it relates to impacts. The one with the lesser impact would rank first, and then the next second impact would rank second. So taking a look at the rankings, basically looking at them and seeing which ones, looking at all these criteria, which ones are ranking first versus second, and how does that, we've rolled them up into a total so that we can kind of see how they're performing overall in terms of the rank. And you could see here, it's interesting, but option 2B is performing the best overall at elementary, middle, and high school. High school ranks the same. The total sum of the ranks for high school are ranking the same, where it's getting second place in a couple categories and first in another, and it swaps at the high school. But it's a close run here for these two options, but the option 2B currently is performing better in looking at as it relates to the scores than option 1B. Does anybody have any comments or questions about the scoring? And this is what we will take to the public in December as well, and talk about these to help them further analyze the data that we're looking at. So that is, I wanted to talk about that. That is something just a difference in our methodology, but I'm happy with the change that's been made so that now the ranking is separate, is standalone, and we're looking at things equally here as it relates to the ranking. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, let's talk about December 6th. So this was something that I was just brought to light here. The public information sessions are scheduled to go from 6 to 7:30 at the high schools. I have here, I say, please arrive at 6:30, committee members. I meant 5:30. If you could be here at 5, if you could be at the site at 5:30, that would be great. I know that you're coming off of work at 5 o'clock and in traffic and things like that. If it's a problem, try to be there as early as you can. We'd like you to see the setup with how the meeting will be set up. Basically, what we're doing is we're hosting meetings at Crestwood High School is on Monday the 6th from 6 to 7:30, and then we're going to Lakewood on the 7th. From 6 to 7:30, and then Sumter on the 8th. If at all possible, if you guys as committee members can be at all three of these, it would really be appreciated. Because what we're going to be doing at these meetings is we're going to have a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation in the auditorium, where we're going to talk through our objectives, our criteria, our timeline, all those things that we've been talking about at the beginning of these meetings, and where we've come as a committee up to date. So give the public an overview of the process that's evolved to date. After the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to have maps posted out in a public foyer out in the open on either walls or on easels. So we'll have the options 1B and 2B posted, and we'll also have some statistics. The numbers will be posted on a large format plot. And we'll have a couple of copies of these, maybe 2 or 3 copies available, and so that people don't bottleneck at maps. And what we ask is that members of the committee, as well as myself and James Cooper from our office, will be there around maps, talking with members of the public about the maps. If they have a question about where they're going, we'll help them orient themselves on the map and understand, here you are in the current map, and on each option you're at these zones. Listen to the public, what the public has to say, and have conversations somewhat like a gallery walk type of format. But there will be, we are designing an additional survey specific to this effort that we're going to ask guide the public to participate in. And so when we get to these meetings, it's important to have these conversations with members of the public, but it's also more important to stress to them to please relay these comments and these conversations into the survey so that everybody can benefit from the input that's being provided. Anybody have any questions about the format of the public information session? Just take note that 6:30 is actually supposed to be 5:30, and we'll update that and make sure it's updated on our website as well.
Is that 5:30 for all three of the meetings or just for the first?
The question, Mr. Cropper, is that 5:30 for all three of the meetings or just the first one? It's,
That's a great question. I don't really see any need for you to have to be there early for all three, just because it's going to be the same format for all three meetings. So if you get there maybe early at the first one, see how it's laid out, just kind of see how it's set up. And then, and just for your benefit, you can kind of take a look at the maps and kind of the statistics, and it's everything that you've seen already. We've just got them, we're gonna have them blown up in large format. But I don't think you need to be there early for all three. If you don't get there early for the first one, or you only come to the second one, try to get there early. But and if you show up at 6 o'clock and you have a question, myself and also James will be there, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have at the maps. One of the things I'll tell you is that when you get to these meetings, there is the emotion is there. There will be emotion in the room, and people will be upset because they're looking at moving in these options. And I always tell committee members, if you're dealing with somebody who's very upset, or there's any kind of confrontation or just out of your comfort zone, please send them my way. I'm used to doing this on a daily basis, and I'm more than happy to talk to anybody at any level of intensity. So you just please feel free to direct someone my way if it starts to get heated and it's out of your comfort zone, or you can't answer the questions. So the last thing I have is just the next steps. We'll be doing these high school meetings starting on the 6th. Like I said, we'll have this online survey. We're going to kick it off on the 6th, and it's going to run all the way through the new year till January 3rd. And that's when we'll take the survey down and tabulate some results from the survey. And the general feedback form will be running at the same time in parallel. So we'll be tracking all this feedback, just an additional way to get more input from people. So if we don't talk to you at the 6th through the 8th meeting, because we will not be meeting as a group in December, because we have these public information sessions. The next time we get together as a group will be Thursday, January 13th at the same time. And that's really our next session for meeting it with an ad hoc committee. Okay, there is a question, will the public meetings have a virtual option? So I know that we are planning to be on site, so we will not be hosting a Zoom like this, but I don't know if the school district will have any type of, if there's any way to have a virtual component to the public information session.
Mr. Cropper, I'm going to let Dr. Martin Knox address that, please, sir.
So I was wondering, would live streaming it be an option? Not virtual where they can interact, but it would be an opportunity for us to live stream it and target more of a larger audience.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what I put virtual. This is Alicia Rodriguez. I meant a live stream so that people could see it.
Yes, I think we can work something out.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion, a great idea.
Mr. Austin.
I was just saying, like we did the citizen advisory committee.
So that's a great suggestion, just to try to get as many people to participate as possible. That's really the goal. And I know that the district is going to be they've been doing a really good job of reaching out to families and getting parents aware of what's going on. And they're going to do another. They're going to keep blasting the public with information about this upcoming meeting, and so they've put out a community interest survey, and I know that has had a lot of feedback from as well. So I do expect that these are going to be pretty well participated, in my opinion. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see 100 people or more at one or more of these public info sessions. So I'm excited to have it. I'm glad the district has decided to host these on site.
All right, Mr. Crop, before you get away, let me come back to our people in person and our people who are virtual to see if they have any questions, information, anything to share with the committee. So at this time, I'll start with our board members present and then to any of our virtual folks. Mr. McLeod?
I guess this would be to the three of us. This study is going along very smooth, very fast. And I know that it'll be supposed to be done, finalized in March. But at that time, I think the district is pretty much going into or finishing up preparing for next year. And I don't know if we're planning to implement this next year, but I would suggest that we make it a 2-year process instead of a 1-year process that quick. Because they're already planning for what's going to be going on in our schools as they are for next year. I think they're going to need more time to get this implemented in those couple of months.
We tasked the administration with devising that plan of how that transition will look.
That's what I was going to say. We'll be to the administration.
Then I guess we would discuss it.
Think about that.
I mean, there will be more suitable to discuss how that transition will look than we would be.
Yeah, they would definitely know. And another piece of that, of course, would be obviously first and foremost the students, but staff is going to have to follow students.
Right.
So we would have to look at how we're going to deploy various teachers with the changes in numbers at the various schools. So, and keeping in mind that basically time-wise, we start the scheduling for kids for the next year, I guess in February, late January, February. So all of that will be going on. So that's a good point.
That gives a couple of months if we try to do it next year to get everything set in stone.
Well,
maybe it looks as though like our pre-K kids or our kindergarten kids that are starting, maybe they're the ones, the first phase, maybe we do it in phases or something of that sort.
Okay. So we will ask administration to kick that around a little bit and
You can bring that back to
think about some
more, I guess.
bring it back to the floor.
That's
Well, that
why
worked
we're
out
sending
more
stuff to
than
policy committee.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Ray, are you still there?
She's not. She had to leave.
She had to leave. Okay, and I guess the virtual folks heard that conversation. So that's what we'll do is let Dr. Martin Knox wrestle with that one a little bit and then come back to the full board with some information. All right, anything else?
Anybody out there?
All right, anybody in virtual? You see anybody?
I don't see any other chats. So.
Okay, no other chats. I see 4 is the last one. All right, well, recommendations, we really don't have one since we're yielding to our administrator to our administration come back.
I guess the only recommendation is the recommendation about the discussion with policy committee.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll bring that to the full board to refer back to the policy committee. And I'm going to appoint you, since you chair the policy committee, when we get to that board meeting, we'll have that. I'll leave you to have that.
Another thing that was brought up earlier that policy also might want to look at was employees.
Yep, I got it.
Got
You
that?
got
Okay.
that. Yeah.
What do you mean, like following kids?
Employees,
The
students,
teacher
Oh.
evaluation.
making,
Yeah.
Okay. All right, can think of anything else? Got more notes?
No, sir.
Okay, I guess that brings us down to closing the meeting, and I just want to again thank everybody for their participation. This is a lengthy process, and we've taken it by clips and moving along, and thank everybody that participated tonight on our committee, as well as the public that is viewing this. And again, from our last meeting where we had approximately 40 comments, this time we're up to 100, or right at 100, so that's a good thing. So please, public, parents, give your input, give your suggestions, give your ideas, give your concerns, and please utilize that opportunity, and then encourage you to come out to our public presentations December 6th, 7th, and 8th. And we look forward to having that dialogue and that feedback and that input coming with those meetings too. Now, having said that, I'll call the meeting to a close and we will adjourn.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford.
You too.
First time I ever forget.